When a frightened little boy begged to stay on the school bus overnight, the driver first assumed that the boy was looking for an adventure. But a glimpse of a bruise beneath his sleeve, and the fear in his eyes, revealed a far darker truth. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you believe the truth should always come to light, be sure to like and subscribe for more. The afternoon light filtered through the classroom windows of Redbridge Academy, casting long shadows across the desk. Mr. Carter watched as his students filed out, their excited chatter filling the hallway as another school day ended. All except for one. In the back corner, Harry Wilson remained seated, his small frame hunched over his desk, pencil moving slowly across a sheet of paper. "Harry!" Mr. Carter approached, his voice gentle. The bell rang. "Don't you want to catch your bus?" The 9-year-old boy looked up, his hazel eyes widening with something that looked like panic before he quickly masked it. "Sorry, Mr. Carter. I was just finishing my drawing." Mr. Carter glanced at the paper, a detailed sketch of a fortress with high walls and a tiny figure standing outside. Something about the image made his teacher's instincts prickle with concern. "That's quite good," he said, crouching down beside the desk. "Who's that outside the castle?" Harry's hand moved to cover the small figure. "Nobody important." In the month since Harry had arrived at Redbridge Academy, James Carter had noticed many such moments, brief glimpses into what seemed like a troubled interior life. The boy wore long sleeves regardless of the weather, flinched at sudden movements, and rarely spoke unless spoken to directly. His academic work was excellent, but his social interactions were almost non-existent. "You don't want to miss your bus," Mr. Carter repeated softly. "Ms. Chambers doesn't like to wait." At the mention of the bus driver, Harry's expression softened slightly. He carefully folded the drawing and tucked it into his backpack. "She tells good stories sometimes," he admitted quietly. "Does she?" Mr. Carter smiled, relieved to see even this small spark of enthusiasm. Harry nodded, standing up and slipping his backpack over his shoulders with a wince so subtle most would have missed it. But Mr. Carter had been teaching for 15 years, and before that, he'd been a child with his own secret. He recognized pain when he saw it, even when it was hidden. "Harry," he said, "you know my classroom is always open if you need a place to work. Or just to talk." The boy paused at the door, his face a mask of careful neutrality that no 9-year-old should have mastered. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," he said formally, before disappearing into the hallway. James Carter stood alone in the classroom, the uneasy feeling in his stomach growing stronger. There was something wrong in Harry Wilson's life, and he couldn't shake the responsibility he felt to find out what it was. In the faculty lounge the next morning, Mr. Carter sought out Eleanor Keller, Harry's homeroom teacher. "Have you noticed anything concerning about Harry Wilson?" he asked, keeping his voice low as he poured himself a cup of coffee. Miss Keller, a veteran teacher with silver-streaked dark hair and keen eyes, nodded immediately. "From day one. The boy barely speaks, jumps at shadows, and I've seen marks that don't look like typical playground injuries." "I've sent 2 notes to his parents requesting a meeting," Mr. Carter said. No response. "Foster parents," Ms. Keller corrected. "The Wildings. They took him in about 6 months ago. I called their home twice last week. The woman, Marissa, was very polite, very apologetic about missing the notes. Said they've been busy with work. She promised they'd come in soon, but they haven't," Mr. Carter finished. "I'm considering contacting Child Protective Services," Ms. Keller admitted. "But without concrete evidence. They could just deny everything, and then Harry's situation might get worse," Mr. Carter sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. At 38, the stress of cases like this had already etched premature lines around his eyes. "Let me try talking to him again. Maybe he'll open up." But Harry didn't open up. For the next 2 weeks, Mr. Carter created small opportunities for conversation, asking Harry to help organize books during lunch, offering extra credit assignments that required one-on-one meetings, but the boy remained guarded. He was unfailingly polite, even eager to please, but any personal questions were met with rehearsed answers that revealed nothing. It was Rose Chambers, the school bus driver, who witnessed the first crack in Harry's carefully constructed facade. Rose had been driving the Redbridge Academy route for nearly a decade. In her 56 years, she'd seen all types of children come and go. She noticed things about her passengers: who sat with whom, who needed a kind word in the morning, who was having a rough day. Harry had caught her attention immediately, with his two serious eyes and the way he always chose a seat alone, usually near the front where she could see him. On a rainy Thursday afternoon in October, Rose noticed Harry was the last to exit the bus at his stop. He moved slowly down the aisle, his eyes fixed on the two-story house across the street where a car was pulling into the driveway. "Everything okay, buddy?" Rose asked, watching him in the large rearview mirror. Harry clutched his backpack straps tightly. "Ms. Chambers." His voice was barely audible above the engine's idle. "What time do you start the bus in the morning?" 6:30, she answered. "Why do you ask? And where does the bus stay at night?" Rose turned in her seat to look at him directly. "In the school parking lot." "Harry, what's going on?" The boy's eyes darted to the house again, where a tall man was now standing on the porch watching the bus. When Harry spoke again, his words came out in a rush. Would it be okay if I stayed on the bus tonight? Just for one night? I can be quiet. No one would know." Rose's heart sank. In her years of driving, she'd heard many unusual requests from children, but this one sent alarm bells ringing. "Harry, I can't let you do that. It's not safe, and I'm sure your parents would be very worried." "They're not my parents," Harry whispered, and then his sleeve rode up as he adjusted his backpack, revealing a ring of dark bruises around his wrist, like someone had grabbed him too hard and too often. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Rose saw raw fear in the boy's face, the kind no child should ever know. Before she could respond, the man on the porch called out sharply, "Harry, get inside now. You're letting the rain in." Harry's expression immediately shuttered closed. "I'm sorry," he murmured to Rose, then hurried down the steps and across the street, his small shoulders hunched against both the rain and whatever awaited him inside. Rose Chambers sat motionless in her driver's seat long after the door to the Wilding house had closed. Then, with hands that shook slightly, she picked up her cell phone and called the school principal. By the next morning, the school's response mechanism had been activated. Sarah Taylor, a social worker assigned to Redbridge Academy, arrived early to meet with the principal, Mr. Carter, and Ms. Keller. "Based on what Ms. Chambers reported, we have enough to conduct a welfare check," Sarah explained. She was a compact woman in her early 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor that belied a deep compassion for the children she served. "I'll visit the home today, but I'll need background information first." Mr. Carter provided what little he knew. "Harry transferred here a month ago. Excellent student academically, but socially withdrawn. The few times I've asked about his home life, he gives vague, positive answers that sound rehearsed. His previous records show 3 school changes in the past 2 years," Ms. Keller added. "Before the Wildings, he was with another foster family for 4 months, and before that, a temporary group home." Sarah nodded, making note. "Any documented history of abuse?" "Nothing in his file," the principal said. But his original removal from his biological parents was due to neglect and suspected substance abuse. That was when Harry was 7. "I'll approach this carefully," Sarah promised. "Sometimes foster parents who seem ideal on paper can be very different behind closed doors. But we need to be certain before making accusations." "Just please help him," Mr. Carter said quietly. "Something's very wrong in that house." That afternoon, Sarah Taylor pulled up to the Wilding residence, a well-maintained home in a middle-class neighborhood. The rain had cleared, leaving everything looking washed and deceptively peaceful. Marissa Wilding answered the door promptly, her surprise at seeing a social worker quickly hidden behind a pleasant smile. "Ms. Taylor, please come in. I wish the school had called to let us know you were coming. I would have tidied up a bit more." The house was already immaculate, Sarah noted, with tasteful furnishings and family photos displayed prominently, though she noticed that while there were many of the Wildings themselves, only one included Harry, and in it, he stood slightly apart from his foster parents, his smile not reaching his eyes. Colin Wilding emerged from what appeared to be a home office, his handshake firm and confident. "What brings you by today? Is there an issue with Harry's schoolwork?" Sarah explained the purpose of her visit in neutral terms, watching their reactions carefully. "We've noticed Harry seems withdrawn at school, and there have been some concerns about his physical well-being." "He's a shy boy," Marissa said immediately. "We've been trying to help him come out of his shell, but it takes time, especially given his background." "And what concerns about his physical well-being?" Colin asked, his tone sharpening slightly. "Harry is well-fed, has his own room, new clothes. We've taken him to every doctor's appointment required by the state." "May I speak with Harry?" Sarah asked. "Of course," Marissa said. "He's upstairs doing homework. I'll get him." When Harry entered the living room, Sarah immediately noticed the changes in his demeanor from what his teachers had described. Here, he was even more reserved, his eyes constantly flicking to Colin Wilding's face as if checking for reactions. "Harry, Miss Taylor would like to ask you some questions," Marissa said, her voice gentle but with an underlying tension. "We'll give you some privacy." "Actually," Sarah interjected, "I'd like to speak with Harry alone, perhaps in his room?" A look passed between the Wildings so quickly that Sarah almost missed it. "Of course," Colin said after a beat. "Harry, take Miss Taylor upstairs." Harry's room was as neat as the rest of the house, with new furniture and age-appropriate books and toys, but something about it felt staged rather than lived in. There were no personal touches, no treasured objects displayed, nothing that reflected a child's natural inclination to make a space their own. "Harry," Sarah said gently when they were seated, "I want you to know that you can tell me anything, and you won't get in trouble." The boy sat perfectly still on the edge of his bed, hands folded in his lap. "I like it here," he said, the words coming out with practiced ease. "The Wildings are very nice to me. Ms. Chambers, your bus driver, told me you asked to stay on the bus overnight. Can you tell me why?" Harry's face paled slightly, but his expression remained carefully blank. "I didn't mean it. I just thought it would be an adventure. May I see your arms, Harry?" He hesitated, then slowly pushed up his sleeve. The bruises Rose had spotted were gone, but Sarah noticed faint yellowish marks where they had been, indicating they were healing. "How did you get these marks?" "I fell off my bike," Harry replied too quickly. "Do you feel safe here, Harry? With the Wildings?" For just a moment, Sarah saw real emotion flash across the boy's face, fear, uncertainty, a desperate plea for help. But then he looked toward the door, and his expression closed off again. "Yes," he said flatly. "I feel safe." Sarah knew she wasn't getting the truth, but she also knew she couldn't force it. Pushing too hard might only make things worse for Harry if she couldn't remove him immediately. And without clear evidence or disclosure, her hands were partially tied. Before leaving, she gave Harry her card. "You can call me anytime, day or night," she told him, pressing it into his small hand. "For any reason at all." Downstairs, she informed the Wildings that she would be checking in regularly and expected them to attend the parent-teacher conference scheduled for the following week. "Of course," Marissa smiled. "We want what's best for Harry." As Sarah drove away, the unease in her stomach had only grown stronger. Everything looked perfect on the surface, but years of experience had taught her that the most dangerous homes often did. She made a call to her supervisor, requesting expedited background checks on Colin and Marissa Wilding and any previous foster children who had been in their care. The next day, Harry didn't come to school. Marissa Wilding called to report that he had a stomach virus. The same excuse came the following day. By the third day of absence, Mr. Carter couldn't contain his worry any longer. Something happened during that home visit, he insisted to the principal. They're keeping him home because they're afraid of what he might say or what we might see. Ms. Taylor is following protocol, the principal reminded him. We can't just storm in there without cause. A 9-year-old boy begging to sleep on a school bus isn't cause? Mr. Carter ran a hand through his hair in frustration. What if by the time we have enough cause, it's too late? That evening, James Carter found himself driving past the Wilding house. He told himself it was just to ease his mind, that he would simply drive by and continue home. But when he saw Harry in an upstairs window, standing perfectly still and staring out at the street, something inside him broke. He parked his car and approached the front door, not entirely sure what he would say. Colin Wilding answered, surprise quickly turning to wariness on his face. Mr. Carter. This is unexpected. I was concerned about Harry, James said. 3 days absent is unusual for him. As my wife told the school, he's been ill. He's improving, but still not well enough for school. Could I see him? I've brought the assignments he's missed. James held up a folder he'd prepared as an excuse. Colin's posture stiffened. That's not necessary. He's resting now, and we don't want to disturb him. It would only take a moment. Mr. Carter, Colin cut him off, his voice hardening, while we appreciate your concern, Harry is our responsibility. We'll decide when he's well enough for visitors or school. Now, if you'll excuse me. The door closed firmly in James's face, leaving him standing on the porch with a growing sense of dread. As he turned to leave, he glanced up at the window where he'd seen Harry, but the boy was gone. The following Monday, Harry returned to school. Mr. Carter immediately noticed the difference. The boy moved more stiffly, kept his head down even more than usual, and there was a new wariness in his eyes. During lunch, Mr. Carter found a reason to keep Harry behind. I missed you last week, he said casually, arranging books on a shelf. Feeling better? Yes, sir, Harry replied mechanically. Your foster parents said you had a stomach virus. Must have been pretty bad. Harry just nodded, saying nothing. Harry, Mr. Carter said gently, turning to face him, I want to help you, but I can't unless you tell me what's happening. For a moment it seemed the boy might speak. His lips parted, his eyes filled with something like desperate hope. Then the classroom door opened as another teacher walked in, and the moment was lost. Harry mumbled an excuse and fled. Later that afternoon, Ms. Keller intercepted Mr. Carter in the hallway. Harry changed for Jim in the bathroom stall today, she whispered urgently. But Tommy Wilson saw marks on his back when his shirt rode up. Red welts, James. Like someone hit him with something. That was enough. They went straight to the principal, who called Sarah Taylor immediately. By the end of the day, Sarah had arrived with a police officer and a court order to examine Harry medically. The examination confirmed their worst fears. Harry's back and sides were covered with bruises and welts in various stages of healing. The most recent ones were clearly only days old, coinciding with his absence after Sarah's visit. I'm removing him from the home today, Sarah told the school staff grimly. The Wildings will be investigated, but for now, Harry needs a safe placement. What about criminal charges? Mr. Carter demanded. That depends on the investigation and whether Harry will testify about what happened, Sarah explained. Without his testimony, it might be difficult to prove who caused the injuries. Where will he go? Ms. Keller asked. To an emergency shelter first, while we look for a suitable foster placement, Sarah said. Unfortunately, there's a shortage of homes right now. Mr. Carter thought of Harry, quiet, artistic, terrified Harry, in an impersonal shelter. What if I offered to be a temporary foster placement? He asked suddenly. Sarah looked surprised. Are you certified? Not yet, but I've been considering it for a while, he admitted. I have a spare room. I'm already background checked for teaching. Couldn't we expedite the process, given the emergency? "It's not standard procedure," Sarah said slowly, "but I can talk to my supervisor. In the meantime, Harry goes to the shelter until we have a better option." When Sarah Taylor and the police officer arrived at the Wilding home that evening, the confrontation was volatile. Colin Wilding shouted about violations of their rights and threatened lawsuit. Marissa wept dramatically, claiming they'd only ever tried to help a troubled boy who hurt himself for attention. Through it all, Harry stood silently, his few belongings packed in the same backpack he took to school, his face expressionless until the moment he was escorted to Sarah's car. Only then, when the Wilding house was receding in the distance, did he let out a shuddering breath that suggested he'd been holding it for months. "You're safe now," Sarah told him. "No one is going to hurt you anymore." Harry said nothing, but his hands relaxed their death grip on his backpack. The children's emergency shelter was clean and staffed by caring professionals, but it was still an institutional setting with multiple children in crisis. Harry was assigned a bed in a room with 3 other boys, given a schedule of meals and activities, and told he would meet with a therapist the next day. For a child already struggling with trauma and displacement, it was overwhelming. Despite Sarah's assurances that she would visit often and that this was temporary, Harry retreated further into himself. He followed the rules perfectly, spoke only when spoken to, and spent hours staring blankly at the pages of books he wasn't really reading. On his 3rd night there, Harry made a decision. The window in the bathroom opened onto a small side yard. After lights out, when the night supervisor was busy with a new arrival, Harry slipped from his bed, retrieved his backpack from the storage cubby, and squeezed through the window. His heart pounded as he dropped to the ground below, but determination drove him forward. He couldn't stay there, with strange adults and troubled kids and the constant fear that the Wildings would somehow get him back. He didn't have a destination in mind, just away. Away from the shelter, away from the Wildings, away from the constant feeling of being unwanted and in danger. He walked for hours, sticking to side streets and hiding whenever cars passed, until exhaustion forced him to take shelter in the doorway of a closed bookstore. It was there, huddled with his backpack as a pillow, that James Carter found him the next morning. Mr. Carter had been on his way to the school, earlier than usual because he couldn't sleep for worrying about Harry. When he spotted the small figure in the recessed doorway, he almost didn't stop. But something made him look twice, and with a jolt of recognition, he pulled his car to the curb. "Harry?" he called softly, approaching slowly so as not to frighten the boy. "Harry, it's Mr. Carter." The child's eyes flew open, wide with fear that gradually subsided as he recognized his teacher. "I'm sorry," he whispered, scrambling to his feet. "Please don't send me back." "To the shelter?" Mr. Carter asked. Harry nodded miserably. "Or to the Wildings. Please." James Carter made a split-second decision. "Come with me," he said, holding out his hand. "I'm not taking you back to either place right now. Let's get you some breakfast and we can talk." In a small diner 2 blocks away, over pancakes that Harry only picked at, Mr. Carter learned more about Harry's life with the Wildings than the boy had ever revealed before. "They were nice at first," Harry said quietly, staring at his plate. "For like 2 weeks. Then I spilled juice on the carpet and Colin got really mad. He grabbed my arm so hard it left marks. After that, they were different." "Different how?" Mr. Carter prompted gently. "Rules. So many rules. Don't make noise. Don't leave my room without permission. Don't talk about what happens in the house." Harry's voice grew even quieter. "And punishments when I broke the rules. Even when I didn't know I was breaking them." "The marks on your back?" Harry nodded. "Colin has a belt. And sometimes he would lock me in the closet under the stairs. For hours. It was dark." His voice broke on the last word, and for the first time since Mr. Carter had known him, Harry began to cry, silent tears that spoke of a child who had learned that crying out loud only made things worse. Mr. Carter fought to keep his own emotions in check. "Harry, I need to call Miss Taylor." She needs to know you're safe. Fear flashed across the boy's face. She'll make me go back to the shelter. Maybe not, Mr. Carter said. I've been talking with her. I might be able to take care of you for a while, but we have to do it legally. Running away doesn't solve anything. You would take care of me? Harry looked up, confusion and fragile hope in his tear-streaked face. I would like to try, Mr. Carter said honestly. But first, we need to call Miss Taylor. Sarah arrived at the diner 30 minutes later, relieved to find Harry safe but concerned about the legal implications of the situation. She took Mr. Carter aside while Harry finished his breakfast. You can't just take him, she said in a low voice. There are procedures. And after what you just told me about his disclosures, this is now a criminal investigation. He'll need to make a formal statement. He won't talk to strangers, Mr. Carter insisted. You saw how he was at the shelter. But he's talking to me. Let me help him through this. Sarah hesitated, then nodded slowly. I'll call in some favors, see if we can get you emergency certification as a foster parent. But Harry still needs to go back to the shelter today while we work it out. It took 3 more days, 3 days of paperwork, home inspections, and background checks, before Harry was allowed to move into Mr. Carter's modest home. During that time, Harry had given a formal statement about the abuse to a specialized child interviewer, and the Wildings had been arrested on charges of child endangerment and assault. But the legal battle was just beginning. The Wildings hired an expensive attorney who immediately began building a defense based on Harry's history in the foster system. They claimed he was a troubled child who self-harmed for attention and made up stories about caretakers who tried to impose necessary discipline. For the next several weeks, Harry settled into life with Mr. Carter. Slowly, he began to relax, to trust that this home had different rules, ones designed to keep him safe rather than controlled. He started talking more, even smiling occasionally, especially when Mr. Carter set up an art space where Harry could draw whenever he wanted. But the looming court case cast a shadow over everything. Harry's nightmares intensified whenever he had to meet with lawyers or victim advocate. The prosecutor warned them that without Harry's testimony in court, the case against the Wildings might not be strong enough for a conviction. He's just a child, Mr. Carter argued during one meeting. Hasn't he been through enough? Unfortunately, the justice system requires evidence, the prosecutor explained. And in cases like this, the victim's testimony is crucial. The medical evidence shows abuse, but the Wildings are claiming they discovered the injuries and were about to report them themselves. As the preliminary hearing approached, Harry became increasingly withdrawn again. The night before he was scheduled to appear, Mr. Carter found him hiding in his closet, sketchbook clutched to his chest. "Hey," Mr. Carter said softly, sitting on the floor beside the open closet door. "Can I see what you're drawing?" Harry hesitated, then passed over the sketchbook. The page showed a small stick figure in what appeared to be a courtroom, surrounded by looming, faceless adults. In the corner, 2 larger figures with angry expressions reached toward the child with exaggerated, clawed hand. "Is this how you feel about tomorrow?" Mr. Carter asked. Harry nodded, pulling his knees to his chest. "What if they don't believe me? What if they make me go back?" "That won't happen," Mr. Carter promised. "I won't let it happen. And you know what? The bravest thing isn't being unafraid. It's being afraid but doing the right thing anyway." "I don't feel brave," Harry whispered. "You are, though. Every day you get up and keep going, that's brave. Every time you trust someone after being hurt, that's brave. And tomorrow, if you tell the truth, no matter how scary it feels, that will be the bravest thing of all." The courtroom the next day was intimidating despite efforts to make it less so for the child witness. Harry sat tensely beside his appointed advocate, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him, refusing to look at the Wildings who sat across the room. When it was his turn to speak, Harry's voice was barely audible at first. The judge had to ask him repeatedly to speak up. The questions were simple to start: his name, age, where he went to school, But as they turned to his time with the Wildings, Harry's answers became shorter, his body language more closed off. "Harry," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell us what happened when you broke the rules in the Wilding home?" Harry stared at his hands. "I got punished," he whispered. "And how were you punished?" Silence stretched out. Harry's breathing quickened. From his seat behind the prosecutor's table, Mr. Carter could see the boy's shoulders trembling. The defense attorney stood up. "Your Honor, if the witness is unable to testify." Something in the attorney's smug tone seemed to trigger a change in Harry. He looked up, his gaze moving from the judge to the Wildings, who sat with practiced expressions of concern. For a moment, the courtroom was completely still. Then Harry raised his hand and pointed directly at Colin and Marissa Wilding. "They hurt me," he said, his voice suddenly clear and strong. "Colin hit me with his belt when I talked too loud or didn't clean my room perfect. Marissa watched and never stopped him. They locked me in the closet overnight when I asked for more food. They said if I told anyone, they would find me and do worse things." His voice broke, but he continued. "I was scared all the time. I still am." The simple, direct testimony had more impact than hours of expert witnesses could have achieved. Even the defense attorney seemed momentarily stunned into silence. In the end, the Wildings were convicted on all counts and sentenced to prison terms. Harry's testimony had been the turning point, the moment when their carefully constructed facade crumbled entirely. But the victory felt hollow when, 2.5 weeks later, Mr. Carter woke in the middle of the night to find Harry's bedroom empty, the window open, and signs of forced entry through the back door. The Wildings had been released on bail pending appeal, and they had taken Harry. The next 4 days were the most harrowing of James Carter's life. An Amber Alert was issued immediately, and the FBI joined the search given that the Wildings had likely crossed state lines with Harry. Mr. Carter barely slept, answering the same questions from law enforcement again and again, clinging to his phone in case there was news. Sarah Taylor arrived at his home each morning, bringing coffee and updates, staying until late in the evening to coordinate with the various agencies involved. Ms. Keller organized the school community to distribute flyers and search the local area, though everyone knew the Wildings had probably taken Harry far away. On the 4th day, when hope was beginning to fade, the call came. A motel clerk in a small town 3 states away had recognized the Wildings from the news. FBI agents surrounded the motel room, and after a tense standoff, they breached the door when Colin Wilding threatened harm to Harry. An agent's decisive action, a well-placed tackle, had incapacitated Colin before he could carry out his threat. Harry was found huddled in the bathroom, terrified but physically unharmed. The reunion at the local hospital, where Harry was taken for evaluation, broke through the last of the walls the boy had built around his heart. When he saw Mr. Carter rush into the room, Harry launched himself into his teacher's arms and sobbed openly, all pretense of stoicism forgotten. "You came for me," he kept saying between sobs. "You really came." "Always," Mr. Carter promised, his own eyes wet with tears. "I will always come for you, Harry." The Wildings were sent back to prison, this time without the possibility of bail, facing additional charges of kidnapping, endangering a minor, and violating court orders. Their appeals were denied, and they would remain incarcerated for many years to come. For Harry and Mr. Carter, the road to recovery was just beginning. Nightmares plagued Harry's sleep, and loud noises or sudden movements could trigger panic attacks. But with therapy, time, and the unwavering support of Mr. Carter, Ms. Keller, Sarah Taylor, and even Rose Chambers, who often drove out of her way to visit, Harry slowly began to heal. The formal adoption process began 2 months after the kidnapping. When the social worker asked Harry how he felt about becoming James Carter's legal son, the boy's answer was simple and profound. "He's already my real dad," Harry said. "The papers just make other people see it too." On the day the adoption was finalized, the courtroom was filled with people from Redbridge Academy. Teachers, staff, even some students and their parents who had followed Harry's story and wanted to support him. When the judge pronounced them legally father and son, the room erupted in applause. As they left the courthouse, Harry holding tightly to Mr. Carter's hand, Harry looked up at the man who had fought so hard to save him. "I'm not scared anymore," he said, a smile breaking across his face like sunrise after a long night. James Carter squeezed his son's hand. "That's good," he replied. "But even if you get scared again sometimes, that's okay too. We'll face it together." Harry nodded, and together they walked down the courthouse steps and toward home, a real home built on love, trust, and the kind of bravery that changes lives forever. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.